Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Above the Rim Rundown, where we run down all things NBA. I am one of your hosts, Memo, and right beside me, I've got Hoops. How you doing?
What's going on, man? Overall, just hanging through in life. Work has been all right, I guess. Kind of had a little bit of an annoying day today. I had to somewhat go a little bit over the clock because of like busy work, but at the end, it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, that
Gotta
always
do.
sucks.
Yeah, it does, especially when it's like, damn, I should be off right now, but
And
it's like I
it's
didn't
the
finish this.
start of the weekend, too.
Yeah, Yeah, but also I kind of had to like fill a little bit of extra void because one of my colleagues took a day off today, so
Mm.
that those are also tough too. Like when you have to like cover for another
Oh,
colleague
yeah,
a little bit.
for
Yeah,
sure.
but overall, aside from that, it's been typical, I guess. Um, how you doing?
I've been alright, just working. As we kind of briefly mentioned last episode, last weekend was my birthday, so I basically got to celebrate all weekend, including last Friday where we went to Knott's. I think that was the highlight of the weekend for sure.
It was a
Uh,
fun time.
it was fun going on to rides that I haven't gone on before, like Ghost Rider, which like I've told you that ride scared me so much. Like I love roller coasters, but I really
Yeah,
thought I was like gonna die at some point. Because of how
yeah.
fast we were going and like the how close we were to the beams and everything. It's such a
Yeah,
wild ride.
we we kind of had to like duck our heads a little bit to try to be safe rather than sorry.
Yeah, I was like so tense. Like I think you took a picture of like our picture of, on the roller coaster. And you could see me like just like this, so tense, holding for
Yeah,
dear life.
it was funny.
Yeah, it was funny. It was a fun night. Like it
It
was
was.
added a like event, so we had like a bunch of free food. What was like the best thing you had that night? Like the most like your favorite thing to eat?
Mm, definitely, there was like a good amount of like a lot of good things we had then. Um, I guess I'll list like some of the things that I really did like. The chili fries are really good.
That
Um,
one's up there for
that
me.
Yeah, that chicken sandwich that I did not eat that night, but I took home was honestly also pretty good, not gonna lie. Like, it really wasn't anything that special, but I still liked it a lot.
I
You
forgot
know
you
how
got a
sometimes,
chicken sandwich.
yeah. That one was like relatively dry, so wasn't too hard to bring back compared to like some other foods.
Oh yeah, you had like
Um,
a backpack full of food. Since like the food was free, uh, you
yeah,
try to take advantage where you can. And
yeah,
next year,
gotta,
if we go, I'm definitely bringing my backpack
yeah, gotta get your money's worth, right?
for sure. Stacking it up with burritos and cookies and whatever we can.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, if I were to pick one that was my favorite, to be honest, maybe I would have to go with the funnel cakes. Like those were really good for sure.
I'm surprised about that. I was a
Um,
little disappointed because just how hard it was. I felt like it should be
yeah,
a lot more soft.
yeah, and I will say this, I haven't really had a lot of funnel cakes like in my life, so I guess in a way that was kind of like a first impression because like if I have had it before, it was so long ago that I don't remember it.
Mm.
So I guess like if I were to try a different version, then maybe I would have the same opinion as you. Like, oh, that was nothing compared to the one from this place. But ironically, I was mentioning to you how I actually preferred the part that didn't have as much of. So we both ended up getting the strawberry glaze
Yeah.
flavor, and it was really good. I do feel like the strawberry glaze was a little bit like overly sweet. So I actually preferred the portions that was like honestly just the powder and not as much of the strawberry. And it was definitely really hard, which I know was a struggle for you. But honestly, I thought it tasted really good on those parts. But yeah, definitely very many good things for sure we had. I would say probably number one funnel cake, and I'd say number two the chili fries. Honestly,
Yeah,
what
chili
about you? Have a favorite?
chili fries is up there. I think it was the boysenberry pie. That was so good. I love a good pie. So I think those are my top two. And the other
Okay,
stuff were like fine. It was like my burrito that I had for dinner. It was kind of dry. The carnitas was kind of dry, but it was free. I can't really be complaining.
yeah. I didn't get to have the burrito because they ran out at the end.
You got a bowl
Unfortunately,
though, right? How was that?
a bowl. Yeah, it was good. Similar to Chipotle, honestly.
That's what my sister said.
Yeah. Or have you ever had kava? Kava is like kind of
No,
similar.
I've
Also,
heard about it.
I actually, yeah, I actually had it for the first time like weekends ago, and it was actually really good. Like low key, I think I actually like it better than Chipotle.
Oh wow,
So
isn't it like
maybe something.
Mediterranean or something?
It's like Mediterranean. I think so. Yeah. So like similar, slightly different-ish, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, maybe if you want, we can go give it a try sometime. That'd be
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
All right, so that was our weekend last week. I did other stuff. Went to a baby shower on my actual birthday. I had Hawaiian food and went to round one, which is always really fun. They've updated it. I don't know the last time you've been there.
The update.
Yeah, there's like a lot more games and stuff. It's really cool.
Mm. Wait, I think I went maybe like about a month ago, and by updated games, is one of them, are you talking about like the SpongeBob VR game, for example? Or
I do remember seeing the SpongeBob VR game. There's a different VR game that was really cool. It's like a shooter. But yeah, there's just a
mm,
lot more games than
I did
before.
see that
Yeah.
one also. Yeah, and they also have like the Mario Kart, and
Oh yeah,
I'm sure they've had that for a while.
I think they did.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, really funny thing. Did you know that that one basketball hoop thing on the very far right has like a little hack where if you just pull up the lever, you pretty much get free basketball. Like the balls would just keep rolling back to you, and you don't have to pay any tickets. Did you know about that?
No, I didn't.
Next time we go, I can show you.
Okay, okay, sounds good.
It's fun.
Yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, round one, always a good time.
it
So
is. It is. We did some
enjoyed.
bowling. It was fun. I got washed though. I had last place. Not gonna lie.
I haven't bowled in a while. Never
But
was really
same,
good at it,
same.
but I do enjoy it though. So it's fun.
Yeah. But enough of that. This is a basketball podcast, so maybe we should talk about basketball. That kind of makes sense. And we're gonna
Yeah.
continue with our series that we've been doing that I've been really enjoying, and we're gonna talk about our top 15 small forwards in the league. We've done an episode on point guards. We've done an episode on shooting guards. You guys should check it out if you haven't already. This time we're talking about small forwards, and not gonna lie, this one's, in my opinion, pretty stacked. I think this is a lot more talented group than the shooting guards. Debatably, even
By
the
far.
point guards. Uh,
Oh yeah, debatably.
yeah. Were there any honorable mentions for you? Like, were there some hard cuts at all?
I will say this. I think as far as like honorable mentions go, there weren't any really like crazy ones that I had to leave off per se. I don't think. Um, but there were definitely like good players that like ultimately didn't make the cut due to like other guys simply just, I believe, being better. And if I were to bring up a few honorable mentions, let me see real quick. Just pulling up.
Yeah, I got a nice handful of honorable mentions.
Yeah, I will definitely say Keegan Murray could be an honorable mention. Um, like he's a pretty good up and rising young guy. Obviously, he had a really good rookie season, a huge contribution to the Kings making the third seed in 2022-23. And then obviously last year the Kings definitely fell off quite a bit, but Keegan definitely still did his thing. So I definitely think that he has a bright future in the league and worthy of an honorable mention. Ultimately, he just missed the cut because there were a few other guys that I felt were a little bit more worthy. Another guy that I would say be an honorable mention, Kyle Kuzma, definitely could have made the list. Um, Ultimately, I didn't put him on the list. A few different factors, I guess. One of them being like a few other guys I felt like more worthy, which is, I mean, kind of straightforward if I were not to have them on my list. But two, I guess a little bit like consistency issues, dating back to like the Lakers days, obviously. But that one was like a little bit more reasonable when he was a number 3 option. But I think with Washington being such a bad team and not having any clear number 1 option, his inconsistency now just isn't really as excusable as during the Lakers stint. And that was part of the reason why I left him off here. And then I'll come up with one more honorable mention. I would say if I were to say one more honorable mention, I'll go ahead and say Miles Bridges, I guess. So obviously Miles Bridges, he probably would be on this list if it was the year before he had that incident that left him suspended from the league. Now he's definitely dropped off a little bit. Not the same player as he was back then, but he's still pretty good. So I think he's still worthy of being in consideration, but ultimately I can't put him in top 15 due to, I guess, the drop off that he's had since before the suspension. But not to say like he's not a good player that I would want on my team. Like, I'm not talking about the Lakers per se. I'm just talking about like if I was a contender, for example, and I needed like a wing, he could be like a really good piece. But ultimately, I had him a little bit short from being on this list. So I would say mostly those 3 guys were who I thought were like worthy of being an honorable mention, but just missed the cut. Any key guys for you, Memo? Or I guess first off, do you have any thoughts on my honorable mentions? And then you can mention yours.
I'll say that I didn't even think of any of those 3. Uh, Not even as honorable mentions. Like again, I feel like this is such a stacked position that those would be like my honorable mentions for my honorable mentions, essentially.
Yeah, and I get that. And I think that as similar to like the other episodes previously, a common issue of this series is sometimes not knowing the exact position to list a player. Like for example, those flex positions.
Yeah,
Like the players can play small forward and power forward, or small forward and shooting guard. And it's like, what position do I list this guy as? I guess it's up to you. But yeah, I know what you mean. Like
Kuzma's a confusing one for me. Like I don't know if he's a small forward. I don't know if he's a power forward. So that's definitely it. But other than that, I think I just prefer the like the honorable mentions I have more than those three as well, and I guess I'll name them right now. So
Yeah,
I thought of Michael Porter Jr. Michael Porter Don't Pass the Rock Jr. I thought of Jalen Johnson, who had a pretty good year last year with the Hawks. I'm
that's
sure he's gonna break out. He might have been my toughest cut, honestly. And then some more
hmm
defensive guys like Jaden McDaniels, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, of course. Um, they also didn't make my list. Uh, did you consider them at all? Are they in your list at all?
low. They are not in my list. There were a few of those guys I definitely considered, and admittedly, a few of those guys I kind of forgot about, to be honest, which might be a little bit of a bad look because those are good players and I should have more respect for them. But yeah, there were definitely a few of those guys I considered for sure. Um, and actually, just thought to mind a player that I should have mentioned in my honorable mentions just now that I somehow forgot to mention. And you could even argue like that I'm crazy for not even having him on my list, but ultimately there were some factors that had him short, and that would be Andrew Wiggins. Now, if it was like a year ago, I think for sure he would have been on my list. But last season, he definitely like fell off a little bit, and he just didn't really look like himself, honestly. Well, actually, okay, correction. Even the previous season, he didn't quite look like himself because he took a lot of time off. And obviously, I know like he had his personal issues, so I'm not necessarily knocking him for that. But like for example, 2021-22, the year when the Warriors won the championship, that Andrew Wiggins was peak Andrew Wiggins, and it showed a little bit of like the potential of what the experts thought he was going to turn out coming out of the draft. Since then, he hasn't really quite been the same. He's still a really good player, but ultimately, I think that he just dropped off a little bit in certain areas. I feel like more than he should have, that ultimately he just fell short from my list.
Yeah, I don't blame you for not having him. Like he did fall off like pretty horribly. Like his peak was such a short peak, like a Mickey Mouse
Yeah,
ass all star starting spot. Like that's it's like shout out to Wiggins. I know he went through a lot, and I think he's going through a lot now. I believe I read
yeah,
somewhere that his dad passed away. Uh,
yeah,
but yeah, he
unfortunately.
was not someone I was thinking about for this list. But shout out to Wiggins. I hope he's doing well.
Yeah, I hope so too. Prayers out to him and his family.
For sure. Should we start the list? Should we talk about 15 through 11?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
All right.
So 15 through 11.
I'm very curious. So the first list we made was very similar. The second list was very different. And now I'm curious about this list. Oh, Keldon. Okay. Okay. Let's talk about it. So, who's in your 15 through 11?
All right. At number 15, I got Keldon Johnson. Number 14, I got Brandon Ingram. Number 13, I got OG Anunoby. At number 12, I got Jeremy Grant. And at number 11, I got Mikal Bridges. So,
Alright.
I guess, did you want to go over both lists first, or you want me to explain my list and then you go over
I
yours?
guess I'll go over mine and then you can explain your list. So, at number
Mm-hmm.
15, I got Franz Wagner. 14, Chris Middleton. 13, Brandon Miller. 12, OG Anunoby. And 11, DeMar DeRozan. And I believe the only player we have in common is OG. We have him like a spot different, but not obviously not too far. Definitely deserves to be in the list for sure. He's
Oh,
probably the
yeah.
best 3-and-D guy when healthy. The issue is he does get injured a lot. but he is like a vital piece if you want to win a chip. Like he's won one with the Raptors. I'm sure he's gonna help the Knicks a lot this season. He helped them a lot last season, but unfortunately, again due to injury, he couldn't really help out during the playoffs. But you know, if he's healthy, I'm sure the Knicks are gonna be great.
Definitely.
And you have his teammate there too, Mikal Bridges, which is
Hmm.
interesting. I think I have him a little higher.
I
Spoiler alert.
definitely would. I definitely would argue a point that he could be higher for sure. Um, Ultimately speaking, I guess there were a few other guys that I felt like were a little bit worthy of being higher, but yeah, I could definitely argue for Mikal being higher for sure. Um, but without further ado, I can go over the guys that I listed on my 15 through 11. Um, the number 15, Keldon Johnson, obviously a really good up and rising young guy, been in the league for a few years now, and has shown crazy potential and flashes. And you could definitely argue for him possibly being higher on this list. Ultimately, I just feel like the guys that I put above him for the most part have been a little bit more polished and done a little bit more, that ultimately I just put him right on the cusp of the list, shall I say. Number 14, Brandon Ingram. So he was another one of these like close cut guys, and I think he's another one where it's like a few years ago he would definitely be higher on the list than this. Um, Obviously, these last few seasons, his effectiveness has gone down a little bit, and that's probably why he was rumored to be in trade talks via the Pelicans. Ultimately, they somehow decided to keep him, and Brandon Ingram is still shown that when he is healthy, he is still a really good player. Obviously, he has had like scoring bursts here and there, like 30-point performances, 40-point performances, even. Um, so definitely the potential is there. Now, obviously, he hasn't quite reached the expectations coming out of the draft. I mean, people are comparing him to Kevin Durant because like a similar body build. Not quite there, but I guess a good like poor man's version. Um, Above him, OG. Obviously, you already mentioned a lot about how he is a really good 3-and-D type, and he obviously done a lot with the Raptors for all those years, and then traded to the Knicks last season. Was doing really good before the injury, unfortunately. Right above him, Jeremy Grant. I put him on this list simply due to the fact that he has been a pretty good like scoring. Well, okay, he has been like a pretty good instant offense producer, shall I say? So obviously, early in his career, he started off with a tanking Sixers team. Didn't really do much. Afterwards was when he started doing more. Like when he first joined when he joined the contenders like OKC and Denver, he was more of like a reserve bench warmer behind the superstars that were on the team. And then when he signed with the Pistons, bad team, that's when he went off because he was able to be not necessarily the clear cut number one option, but he was able to break free a lot more because of the team not really having a true number one option. And then on the Trailblazers, still doing really good. So I had to include him on this list. Um, Number 11, Mikal Bridges. So as mentioned earlier, easily could have been higher on this list. Ultimately, there were just a few other guys that felt like a little bit more polished, done a little bit more. But not to say like that should take anything away from him because like it's kind of similar to like Jeremy Grant, honestly. When he was on a contending team, the Suns, He wasn't able to break free as much due to being behind the other superstar players. As soon as he got traded to the Nets, the man put up several 40-point performances and showed his clear potential and why he is a really good vital piece. And as soon as the Nets traded him away for KD, obviously my bad. As soon as the Suns traded him away for KD, obviously they're really happy to get KD, but Mikal Bridges' loss was clearly felt. They were missing his defensive presence. Obviously, the Suns went from a pretty good defensive team to no defense at all when they gave up the farm for KD. And a huge reason was because of losing Mikal Bridges. So that is why I had to include him on this list, even though could argue he could have been higher. I guess any initial thoughts on my list first before you cover your list?
Yeah, a couple of guys here I don't even have on my list, like Jeremy Grant. I don't have him on my list. I think he's just an empty stats guy, honestly. I think if you want to win, you don't have Jeremy Grant as your first or second option. He's a bucket, but like he's a bucket at Portland right now. Like that doesn't really mean much to me. And then Keldon Johnson, like I guess he's still relatively young. I believe he's only 24 years old, so he could become better. He has potential for sure. His stats to me just don't wow me that much. He's like a mediocre 3-point shooter. Not really a playmaker. So he has potential for sure, but I would prefer like a Herb Jones or James Johnson over those two, honestly. And I'm a little shocked that Brandon Ingram's this low. I forgot where I have him, but I definitely have him higher since he's not in this tier at the moment. Like I still think he's better than OG. Like I think
you still think?
Yeah, but OG's great. He's vital, but like Brandon Ingram, you're right. He did drop off a little bit. Like I think he dropped from 24 points per game to 20, which is kind of significant. But
like 4 points doesn't sound like a lot, but then like if you look at the long run, you realize like it actually is quite a bit. But go on.
But I still think he's a really good player, and it's probably more of a situation type of reason why his numbers are kind of low because of like how weirdly built the Pelicans are, how Zion is in and out of the lineup all the time, how they don't have a point guard, stuff like that. I feel like it's not all on Brandon Ingram, and I don't think it's all like the reason why he might have dipped is not entirely his fault. I feel like there should be blame towards him, but not all of it.
Yeah, partially, not
partially. Yeah. But okay, that's really it for me, I guess. In regards to your list, it's not that bad. Going over mine at 15, again, I have Franz Wagner, whose 3-point shooting wasn't the best last season. It was better the year before. But if he gets that 3-point shot back, I'm sure he's going to help turn the Magic into a very dangerous team. Because we all know the Magic needs an offensive push. Paulo can't do it all. We saw it in the playoffs. Like very, very brutal watches against the Cavs.
Game 7.
If Franz can get his 3-point shot back, he could possibly be like an all-star caliber player. Honestly.
Oh, definitely.
14, I have Chris Middleton. I love this guy. I love seeing him in the playoffs this year, where he was like playing like Kobe, hitting the most clutch shots. It was so fun to watch. But he is older. He's been injured. He's not the same as he was when he won a chip. But I still have a lot of respect for Chris Middleton, so he for sure deserves to be in my top 15. I do have Brandon Miller over him, the now sophomore, no longer rookie. I just think he has a lot of potential. I think he could be the Hornets' best player, especially if LaMelo never plays. He will for sure be the best player. But I believe he averaged almost 20 points in his rookie year. He had a very silent, awesome rookie year. So
Yeah,
that's why
it's because he's on the Hornets.
Exactly. It's because he was on the Hornets, and then we also had the Wemby versus Chet debate all year that kind of blindsided the love for Brandon Miller. But shout out to him. Then I have OG, who I talked about, best 3-and-D player in the league when healthy. And then DeMar DeRozan, who I have a lot of respect for. He's a bucket getter. He is an assassin from the mid-range. But we've seen time from time how he's never really led a good team to a championship position, no matter how great they do in the regular season. He's never found those successes, and this past year with Chicago, he didn't really wow anybody. But shout out to him. He's very clutch, and I'm hoping he'll help the Kings a bit because the Kings kind of need it. As long as they don't outdo the Lakers. But
yeah, definitely.
But yeah, any thoughts on my 11 through 15?
Yeah, I will start by saying majority of these players I all have on my list. A lot of them I actually have ranked higher. Brandon Miller I did not have on my list, not because I don't think he's really good, but I think it was simply because he's so young and only been in the league for 1 year that I feel like some of these other guys kind of have proven a little bit more.
That's fair.
That was why. Yeah, that was why I didn't have him on the list. But I'm not mad at you for having him on the list simply due to potential. But yeah, the rest of these guys I all have on my list, and they're all higher, the guys that I don't have here. And I will say this. Overall, I think the guys you listed here were good. I guess I can mention more about these guys when I get to them on my list. But overall, I say nothing too crazy here. A good lineup of players.
All right, should we move on to the next tier? I guess 10 through 6.
Yeah, I'd say we go ahead and do that.
All right, let's do that. All right. Okay, it's we have we have two at the exact same spot, which is fun to see.
Yeah, and then there's a few guys that I have here that you had in your last set, and then you have here that I had in my last set. So,
right.
Yeah.
So, do you want to go over your list?
Yeah. So, number 10, I have Franz Wagner. Number 9, I have Chris Middleton. Number 8, I have Scotty Barnes. Number 7, DeMar DeRozan. Number 6, Jimmy Butler.
And for me, at number 10, I have Mikal Bridges. So it's just one off from you. Number 9, Brandon Ingram. Number 8, Scotty Barnes, who we both have at the same spot. At number 2, I have Jalen Williams, J-Dub. Not 2, my bad. 7. Number 7 is J-Dub. And number 6, just like you, I have Jimmy Butler, right outside of the top 5. So yeah, Mikal for us are pretty close. Like we have a huge gap between Brandon Ingram, but I kind of understand why you have him a bit lower.
Yeah,
You have Chris Middleton pretty high. What's your reason
I
on
do.
that?
I will say, I think the reason why I had him this high when probably, arguably, he should be lower is the fact that, like, we've seen and know how good he could be when he goes off. And, like, obviously, this is not the 2021 Chris Middleton that was the, I guess, Robin to Giannis, which some people even argued that he was Batman and Giannis was Robin, which is really funny. But I think that was mostly due to the fact that Chris Middleton was able to hit like the threes and like the clutch shots because he's a good jump shooter versus Giannis is not known for being a shooter. That's why some people said that. Um, but yeah, obviously Chris Middleton is not quite that same player from back then, but he's still really good though. So I guess the main reason why I have him this high is because like I know what he's capable of doing when he is at his peak. But yeah, I guess like if we're talking current, there's the argument that he could be lower. I will say that for sure. Scotty Barnes, I considered putting higher, but there were a few other guys that I feel like I guess accomplished a little bit more that I gave them the edge. And I will say this, as far as DeMar DeRozan goes, we have quite a bit of a gap here, I will say, for DeMar. Like, I have him a lot higher than you do. And I would argue, like, Scotty Barnes would quite honestly be higher than him. And then even some of these other guys, maybe, like Mikal Bridges, um, Chris Middleton would be more arguable. But ultimately, I put DeMar this high mostly because like he's a really clutch player in terms of like late game situations. Now like obviously if we're talking playoffs, not as clutch there, but eh, in general. And like at the end of the day it's a team game, so it's not entirely his fault for the playoffs, but like partially still his fault. Anyhow, because he is a pretty clutch player in the regular season, I felt like he was worthy of being pretty high on the list. And then Jimmy Butler, obviously, we've mentioned so many times, time and time again. In the regular season, he doesn't really usually play that hard and do a whole lot. But in the playoffs, he turns it on. And I've always thought of Jimmy Butler like the, in a way, anti Paul George. He's not really as good in the regular season, but he does really great in the playoffs. Versus Paul George, he is really great in the regular season and usually doesn't do as good in the playoffs. They do have similar abilities though, so I will say overall they do have like similar play styles. I do think that Paul George is the better overall player, which will be on the list later. Spoiler. But like, yeah, Jimmy Butler definitely overall still really good. And I will say this: looking at your list, I really like. I have a slight regret. I somehow didn't even put Jalen Williams on my list. I don't know how I forgot about him. Um,
If
I
if you could redo it, where would you put J Dubs?
I would say probably
Not gonna lie, I
pretty
was
high.
wondering where he was. I was wondering if you put him in the top 5 already. But
No, not quite there.
where would you put him?
I would say I would put him probably ahead of Franz and maybe ahead of Chris, honestly, but probably not ahead of Scotty. So maybe I would put him like around 9, I would say. Yeah, I don't
Okay.
know how I forgot about him, honestly. I think partially due to like the position being so stacked. And then I guess another factor could have been maybe I got confused on what position he should be listed as. That may have played a factor. Because, like, doesn't he also play, like, a little bit of power forward?
I actually don't know. Maybe.
Because if so, maybe that was the reason I
I
didn't have him on
guess
this. Because, like,
OKC started Giddy. They started Shea. Was Dort starting?
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. Um, I think the reason why I didn't have him on my list was because I thought he was a power forward. So I guess like I wasn't entirely faulted for not having here
Yeah, he
because of
might have
that
played
reason.
power forward. I actually don't remember. I kind of considered him a
Yeah.
small forward, but I could be wrong,
Hmm.
honestly.
Yeah, it's confusing. But I will say this. If I were to include him on the small forwards list, for sure he would be like in the top 10. But I think the reason why I don't have him is because I put him in my power forwards list, or will put him on my power forward list for the next video. Um, but yeah, definitely he would be in my list if I were to list him as a small forward. But I guess I'll just leave him for the next episode. Um, yeah, but overall though, I think that the players that you listed here are for the most part pretty good. Obviously, I do have Brandon Ingram lower, so that's only one of like the slight disagreements there. But like Mikal Bridges, you have him just one spot higher than me, so we're pretty close there. And then like Scotty Barnes and Jimmy Butler, same exact spots. For the most part, are 10 through 6 are pretty similar.
Yeah, pretty
I guess
similar.
did you want to say anything about like why you have your players at where they are, or
Well, I wanted to say one more thing about your list before moving to mine.
Mhm.
Is that I noticed that Franz is 5 spots higher than me, uh, uh, compared to my list. Why is that? Why do you have him in your top 10?
Yeah, I will say this. They I would say that it's arguable that he could be lower. Ultimately I think I put him this high because like the potential. Obviously in game 7, he had a really bad performance. I think did he like not even score that game, or I think he didn't make a field goal. Maybe he got like a few free throws, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. Anyhow, it was not pretty. But if we were to exclude that performance, I still had faith in this guy a lot. Um, he was like I think before Paulo got drafted, he was essentially the number one option for the Magic, right?
I don't
But now he's
remember.
more of like yeah. I mean, I don't watch the Magic
Same.
players, so I wouldn't know. But I would assume he was probably the number one option back then, and now he's like the number two option. Um, so I guess that was probably the reason why I had him this high, due to like being the one of the main option guys and showing really high potential. And like he's like a pretty good like now I will admit like I haven't really watched him play too much, but from I guess my knowledge, he is like in general a pretty decent defender, or is he not very good for known for his defense? I think he's pretty decent at defense, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. So I guess like a 3-and-D valuable type. Um Definitely one of the better young guys in the league. And I think he'll get better learning from the experience. I believe that was his first playoff appearance, right? So um he'll learn. Um I could definitely argue Mikal Bridges being higher than him due to being in the league longer, more experienced, accomplished more, and more proven. I don't think I would put Jeremy Grant higher than him just because of some of the mentioned reasons you said, for example, like the playing for a bad team and not being as impressive. Granted, like the Magic were bad for a long time. Like Franz has definitely proved more being the number one, number two option. So definitely could argue Franz being lower. Ultimately, I guess I put him here due to the upside to answer your question.
Okay, that's fair. That makes sense. Like, he does have a lot of potential. And, if he finally clicks again, the Magic will be a scary team in the East. So that's fair.
Yeah, could be.
But okay, I guess I'll go over mine. So at number 10, I got Mikal Bridges, who I already mentioned a little bit how he's going to definitely help out the Knicks. He had like all-star potential. A lot of people said he might be an all-star when he went to Brooklyn. I never really saw that ceiling for him, but I knew that he was going to be great. And, his numbers might go down this season just because of how talented the Knicks are. But don't get it twisted. He's going to still be great. He's still going to be out there defending one of the best players on the team, on the opposing team. He's still going to get buckets in. At least I hope so. Ideally, he'd still be around like the 20 points per game mark. We'll see if that'll happen because, they do have Jalen Brunson. They do have Julius Randle. There's only one ball, so again, I think his points per game might go down, but if he could still be around that 20 points per game mark, the Knicks are going to be very scary. I think that's going to be something to look out for. Next, I have Brandon Ingram, who debatably could be lower, but I still, as mentioned before, I think the reason why he had a slight down year is because of just how chaotic the Pelicans as a team is, and maybe with the DeJounte Murray, it'll get better because they'll have a real point guard that will set up Brandon Ingram. We'll see. I don't think DeJounte Murray's the best playmaker, but will be better than CJ McCollum at that part of the game. So, Brandon Ingram's like a question mark at the moment. He could definitely be lower this time next year, but we'll see. Scotty Barnes, I love Scotty Barnes. He is a very versatile player. I've talked about his skill set in the past and how I called him like a diet LeBron because of how he could do a little bit of everything. Definitely not as great of a playmaker, but he could get some assists in there. He'll get his rebounds. Capable scorer. It just needs to work on his jump shot a little bit, I feel like. But still, he could get some threes in at times. A pretty good defender as well. He'll get his blocks, get his steals. He could basically do it all on the court. A very, very talented young guy. So I'm glad we both have him at the exact same spot. Speaking of talented guy, Jalen Williams is up here. Maybe a bit too high, depending on who you ask, but he was debatably the second best player on the best team in the West. Right? They were the first seed, right? I keep forgetting. The OKC Thunder?
OKC? Yeah, the first seed.
Right. It's definitely the second scoring punch for that team. Didn't really translate into the playoffs. He was cooked. There's no denying that. But he's still very young. That was just his sophomore season. He's only going up from here. And, with the additional pieces like Alex Caruso, Isaiah Hartenstein, more players to surround J-Dub and Shea, and more players to do the more dirty work, I feel like Jalen Williams will have more of a shot to shine, be able to focus more on the scoring aspect of the game. So that'll be exciting to see. So we should be looking out for that as well. And then Jimmy Butler, as you said, anti Paul George. Not really notable during the regular season, but most times in the playoffs, he is like playing like Michael Jordan. He is a bucket. He'll get the ball in the hoop no matter what way, no matter what obstacles you put in front of him. If he breaks a leg, he'll still get it in there somehow. It, it unfortunately that didn't happen this past playoffs when they were facing the Celtics because he was injured. That kind of
Yeah,
sucks. That was like my slight hope in order for the Celtics to not win a chip. Um,
I know.
but yeah, like I do like Jimmy Butler is a player that upsets me because like this season he was out of the lineup a bunch of times, and I feel like if he like if he actually played and actually tried, that he would have been a higher seed, and maybe they would have done some damage in the playoffs, which is a conversation I've had with people on one of our TikToks. Um, but yeah, unfortunately, since he doesn't try, the Heat aren't as good as they could be, and they get bounced in the first round against the Celtics. So maybe Jimmy will try this year and hope the Heat
Hopefully.
get a better seeding, but I really am not banking on it. I think this is just how Jimmy Butler is, and he's only getting older, so I don't know about that.
Yeah. And it's like we have seen the Miami Heat have high seas in the past. Like just 3 seasons ago, 2021-22, ironically, they were the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. And that was the year they lost against the Celtics in the conference finals. So like it's possible maybe they'll try a little bit harder, hopefully, but as you mentioned, don't know if we can trust it, honestly. Um I think definitely there's one of the teams where like if they get in and they're healthy, they can shock many people. The problem is there's a lot of scenarios that have to go their way for it to go successfully. Like what they did in 22-23 was a very unlikely run. Kind of similar to what the Lakers did that year, going from 2-10, 7 seed to the conference finals, and the Heat obviously making the finals, just barely falling short. Huge part of the reason was because of Jimmy Butler and his elite playoff play. But yeah, I agree with you. Jimmy Butler at number 6 is the right spot, and that's why we both have him there. And arguably, if he just did a little bit more in the regular season, he could be higher. But for now, I think number 6 is fair. Just sounds about right.
Yeah, sounds right to me. Any thoughts on my list so far, or should we move on to the top 5?
Um, I think that as far as your list goes, I've already said most of my thoughts already. Main thing being like me having Ingram lower than you. And then me not putting J Dub because I thought of him as a power forward. But if he was on my small forward list, he would definitely be up here. And then the other guys, we pretty much have in similar situations. So overall, I think we are good to move to our top 5.
All right, let's do it. I have a feeling our top 5 will have the
It's
same
probably going to be the same guy.
players. Just don't know
Yeah, but
about
like
the
different.
ranking. Yeah,
Yeah, maybe. It would be crazy if it was the same order, though. Imagine.
we'll see. Maybe, maybe. All right,
Yeah,
here
let's
we
see.
go. Oh,
Kind of
oh,
similar-ish, a little different.
a little different. Uh, okay, I can't wait to talk about what you did. Do you want to
Okay.
go over your list first?
Yeah. Number 5, I have Kawhi Leonard. Number 4, I have Paul George. Number 3, Jayson Tatum. Number 2, Kevin Durant. And at number 1, I got LeBron James.
And for me, I have at number 5 Paul George, number 4 Kawhi Leonard. So we have those switched, and then number 3 Kevin Durant, number 2 Jayson Tatum. We have those two switched, and number 1 LeBron James. Uh, where should we go first? I guess we should talk about Kawhi and Paul George. Why do you have Paul George over Kawhi Leonard?
Okay, so I'm gonna start by saying this. If we're talking about the two players' actual skill sets itself and peaks, I definitely think that Kawhi Leonard is a better player than Paul George. But the reason why I do have him lower here is due to Kawhi's inabilities to being trusted to stay on the floor. Now, obviously, last season he was relatively good until like the end of the season and the playoffs went. But it's just Kawhi and his load management and his like injuries ever since he joined the Clippers. It's really hard for me to trust his availability because we all know when he is on the floor, he is easily a very elite player and one of the top in the league. For sure, top 10, arguably, you can say even top 5. But because of me, like, not knowing what to expect if he'll be healthy or not, that's why I have him lower than Paul George. And speaking on that, if you compare their Clippers careers, I think it's safe to say Paul George has done more for that franchise simply because he's played more games for them. And obviously, yeah, as we mentioned, Kawhi is the better overall talent. But because Paul George has been more available for him, he has done more. And like Paul George has had a fair share number of injuries too during his Clippers run. So like it's not like he had a crazy advantage in terms of, like the number of games he's played. I guess well, I guess okay, that remains true. He did not have a crazy number of more games played than Kawhi because he was also injured a good chunk of that one season that Kawhi missed the entire year, 21-22. But he has done more, I think, like in the games he played. And obviously now no longer on the same team. We'll see how they do without each other once again. Um, but yeah, main point being said, if we're talking talent wise, easily Kawhi over Paul George. But due to not knowing what to expect for health, I put Paul George higher there. So now moving on to the top 3, I guess.
Well, I wanted to go over my reason on why I have Kawhi over Paul
Yeah, go ahead.
George, which like uh, your take totally makes sense. Like Kawhi is constantly being injured. Last season he was pretty good. He wasn't load managing as much. He was playing a decent amount of games. Unfortunately, he did get injured in the playoffs, but yeah, I just went with the talent angle. I think Kawhi Leonard is just so much better of a player than Paul George that I had to put him over Paul George. Because when he's healthy, he could be number 1 on those lists, honestly.
Yeah.
So, and also, like, Kawhi Leonard's not someone, what's the word? Not very reliable because of injury. Paul George is not reliable because he's unreliable. Like, in this year's playoffs, when there was a game where Kawhi was playing through injury, only scored like 9 points or something, and yet he still outscored a healthy Paul George. Like, what are you doing? You made
That was sad.
that was sad. James Harden was somehow the best player on the team during that playoff run.
Makes no sense.
Exactly. So, like, although they're both unreliable for different
Yeah.
reasons, if I had to put
Mm-hmm.
my money into a player, I would rather have Kawhi Leonard because I think, yeah, he might be injured, but if he's not, he will come through. We can't say the same for Paul George. So that's why I have
Yeah.
Kawhi over Paul George.
Well, I'm gonna start by saying that I will not argue against your point that I would rather have Kawhi Leonard on my team than Paul George because of his peak. Like, come on now. Would you really? Because, like, here's the thing: Kawhi on the Clippers has not quite been the same playoff performer as Raptors and Spurs Kawhi, but we have seen how elite he has been when he was on those two teams during those two impressive finals runs. And even during like his brief playoff appearances with the Clippers, even though they'll always be known for that 2020 3-1 collapse. 2021 playoffs, Kawhi was having secretly or like quietly, I don't know if you call it quietly, but like somewhat swept under the rug now because of the inconsistency of injuries. 2021 playoffs, Kawhi Leonard had quite a good performance. I remember especially round one against the Mavs. That game seven, like there were a few games that the Clippers were on the brink of elimination that series, and Kawhi showed up when they absolutely needed him to. So I definitely do agree with you. Like banking my chances on who's at their peak, I would definitely rather have Kawhi on my team than Paul George. Um, but yeah, the reasons that I did have Paul George higher was mostly due to the unreliable availability factor. But I do see where you're coming from is like Paul George not showing up in the playoffs because that is definitely very frustrating to watch if you are a fan of the team that he's on. Now, obviously, being a Clippers hater, it was really enjoyable to watch. But I will say this: that when he was on OKC, that was very frustrating because we both like OKC. But then Paul George was doing so bad for that team. It's like, come on, man, what happened to this guy? Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from with your argument, and honestly, I do agree with some of the things you said. Honestly.
Okay. I guess we could now move on to the top three, which is what I really want to talk about because you did something that I did not have the balls to do. I was thinking about it. I was really thinking about it. But you have Jayson Tatum at number three when a lot of people might say he is number one. Part of me
I
wanted
know.
to put him at number three, but
I
I.
know. Like a lot of people would probably get like so pissed at me right now, and quite honestly, I don't give a fuck. Yeah. But let me explain though.
Yeah, explain.
Obviously LeBron and KD, career wise, have done more. And I guess you could say like unfair comparison because they have been in the league like that much longer. Um, but I'm gonna say this: Jayson Tatum, for the majority of the season, plays like he's the number one small forward in the league. But in the playoffs, like the guy, like we've seen how he like just randomly gets carried, disappears because of how stacked his team is, and the fact that like Jaylen Brown carried the hell out of that guy, that he won the MVP in both the conference finals and the finals. And people are gonna say like, I mean, there's some people out there that think that Tatum should have won it and he got robbed. I'm not gonna agree with that, honestly. Like, and I'm gonna say this. Obviously, I'm not a. We're neither of us are fans of Jayson Tatum, and sure that could play a little bit of factor. But the reality is, like, he just tends to out of nowhere put up like lackluster performances when you expect him to do much more. And that's the reason why, like, he doesn't really phase me as much as, like, some of those other guys or LeBron and KD that I put higher than him. Because like those guys are obviously older in their careers right now. But it's like if I needed to absolutely put my trust in a guy to carry me to a, let's say, must-win situation. Now, obviously, it will depend on the overall team structure. The Celtics are clearly a much better constructed team than the Lakers and the Suns. But if you were to put all three of these players on a perfectly well-built roster in a must-win Game 7 situation, I would put in more trust in LeBron and KD over Jayson Tatum.
Yeah,
That's honestly the reason.
If you threw LeBron in the Celtics or Kevin Durant with the Celtics,
it's over.
Not only would they win the chip just like Jayson Tatum, but they definitely would have won Finals MVP.
Oh, easily, yeah. And yeah, definitely that. And yeah, Jayson Tatum, like as mentioned, if you're talking about like the abilities, if he were to just be like more consistent, he probably should be number one. But because of the way that he like is just freely sometimes having like no show performances, and yet the team still wins because they're so stacked, that definitely put me to dip him on this list. And then as far as the top two goes, at the end of the day, despite being 40 years old very soon, I still put LeBron James number one because, like, okay, first off, let me start by talking about KD. After coming back from that catastrophic injury in the 2019 finals, which many people thought would be like very hard to come back from and he would not be the same, you could hardly even tell that he had that injury based on how he's played. Like, still really legendary numbers. Obviously has had some trouble staying on the floor due to injuries. Last year he was relatively healthy, and when he is healthy, really good. Kind of similar to Kawhi Leonard, one of those guys that hasn't been having trouble being reliable to stay on the floor. But when he is easily one of the top players in the league. But the reason why LeBron has to be higher, despite about to be 40 years old, he is still proving that like seemingly father time is not even a thing. Granted, like you could probably see like some areas of his game that he's not quite the same as when he was good as when he was younger, but he is still so effective that quite honestly, if he wanted to, he could probably easily play 5 more years in the league. Does he want to? Probably not. I don't see it. But if he did, he for sure could. And the fact that he's 40 years old and still arguably the top as his position, and probably he for sure is at least still a top 10 player in the league, is just like amazing, honestly. And it's hard to really put anyone above him, honestly. I think that because his bag is just so deep, like all around player, could play all 5 positions if he wanted to. That is why I had to put LeBron number one. But I guess any thoughts on both my ordering, or I guess my ordering first, and then you can go over your ordering?
I guess, yeah. Well, you did what I wanted to do. I'll say that. I wanted to put Jayson Tatum at 3. But, I had to be unbiased. And I did end up putting Jayson Tatum over Durant because I believe Tatum's just a much better defender. He is a better playmaker than Durant. Durant's a lot better of a scorer. We all know that.
Yeah.
I think he's a lot more efficient than Tatum, but yeah, the playmaking has never been part of Durant's game. He's a decent defender, but I think Tatum's better than him at that. So that's why I have Tatum higher than Durant overall. But I'll say, like, Kevin Durant, if he didn't ruin basketball for a few years by joining the Warriors, I think he would have been one of my favorite players of all time. Just watching him play, he's such a flawless player. Like, the man can score from anywhere, and I'm, like, genuinely surprised how he couldn't win a chip without Curry, because he is so talented. That it's honestly just very shocking to me how he hasn't won since being with the Warriors. But yeah,
it's shocking, and it's quite honestly disappointing that he's proving those narratives right. That he can only win with not only a super team, but like that super team.
Yeah.
With Steph being his sidekick. And like quite honestly, if we're being real, he probably should have won one when he was in OKC.
Yeah. If he didn't
Brooklyn,
leave to join the Warriors, I'm pretty sure he would have won with Westbrook.
I think so. I mean, they quite honestly should have won the year when they blew the 3-1 lead
when they
to the Warriors, before the Warriors blew a 3-1 lead to the Cavs, which is quite hilarious, honestly, how he left the team that he blew a 3-1 lead. So he blew a 3-1 lead to a team that also blew a 3-1 lead. And then ultimately they did win championships together. But at that point, they were so stacked. Like, would you really expect anything else? Obviously not. But yeah, that was probably the best opportunity he had winning one without the Warriors was 15-16 in OKC. And yeah, if he would have stayed with OKC, I think for sure he would have won one with them. And then I think that his legacy narratives would be definitely a little bit different. Instead of being called like the sellout that could only win with super teams, they'll be praising him more. Like, KD won a championship with a team that he got drafted by. And though it did take longer than expected, he got the job done. But yeah, it is unfortunate that his career is honestly being like somewhat of his 2 rings are practically a little bit of an asterisk due to the fact that it was such an easy gained and low competition. But yeah, as you mentioned, not very many flaws in his game. Easily one of the top small forwards in history. You could argue probably top 5, honestly. Currently, you cannot leave him below top 3. You could argue like number 2, probably not number 1, still behind LeBron. But yeah, point blank is KD is still really effective despite all the injuries the last few years, and especially the Achilles one.
Yeah, he's very good, but I do have him at 3. So I have him at 3, Tatum at 2, LeBron at 1, and the reason why I have LeBron over Tatum, there's a couple of reasons. One, LeBron is just so much more well-rounded. I think this is one of your points, that he's just a more well-rounded player. Tatum is as well, but like not on the same level as LeBron. Like, he's not nearly as close as being the same playmaker as LeBron. Like, they're like different tiers on that point. I guess Tatum is a better defender than LeBron. Like, there were times this playoffs where I got mad at LeBron because he was very lazily defending other players.
Yeah.
But the one thing you can't teach a player is having dog. Do they have a dog in them? LeBron does. Tatum does not. Tatum,
Agreed.
He had 6th in NBA MVP voting, and then 2nd in Finals MVP voting. He couldn't outplay Jaylen Brown in the finals because he lacked that dog. He was not aggressive from jump. He was pretty disappointing. Low key stat padding, which nobody's talking about, but he in a couple of games he was getting buckets while the rest of his team went to the bench. In the late fourth quarters of the finals, Tatum was a disappointment in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
LeBron hasn't been a disappointment in the playoffs since JJ Barea shut him down, years and years ago when he was a lot younger of a player.
Yeah, I do remember that. That was at that time when LeBron was a villain. It was kind of fun to watch. I will admit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like LeBron showed it, maybe not in this playoffs, but in the Olympics. Who did the Olympics count on to get a clutch bucket every single time? It wasn't Tatum. He wasn't playing. It was LeBron.
Yep. Always it was LeBron. Old man LeBron James at 40 years old. Almost 40 years old.
Almost 40 years old doing Tatum's job because nobody expects Tatum to do as good of a job as LeBron. As a 40-year-old LeBron. Tatum is supposedly in his prime right now. And nobody's taking him seriously. Like, that says a lot, I think.
Yeah, and then another obvious is the fact that Tatum is one of the most boring players to watch. No aura whatsoever.
Zero aura.
Cringe as fuck was those finals impersonation celebrations. Like, come on, dude, can you at least make something original? Like, yeah. But overall, like, talent-wise, definitely LeBron number one. And then Tatum, KD, I guess a little bit more interchangeable debate, but yeah. Both definitely still up there.
Yeah. Like, he's still in my top three, in our top three. Like, we sound very unbiased right now, but, like, come on.
Yeah.
The United States of America trusted LeBron James at almost 40 years old more than a prime Jayson Tatum after he won a championship with the Celtics. Like, come on. Like, how am I supposed to take him seriously?
It's honestly, like, really funny, not gonna lie. And, like, to add on, like, this Celtics championship got swept under the rug so fast because nobody gives a damn.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Maybe if Tatum played more like a superstar instead of a role player, people would care. But yeah, nobody cares.
Yeah. And that's just another thing to add to the narrative. Like, if people don't even give a damn about your championship and forget that you're the champions, that's the real asterisk over the Lakers one, where people are going to remember because they did it under those circumstances. Say what you want about the no fans thing, but many players agreed that it was actually harder. So, yeah, there's that.
Yeah, but I guess that'll end my rant. But for sure, LeBron's better than Tatum.
Easily.
You could argue Tatum being better than every other small forward in the league. I don't care. It's just LeBron. LeBron's better. It's quite easily LeBron. And I'm not even like a LeBron glazer like that too.
Not even.
Like,
LeBron fan, not LeBron sexual.
Yeah, like, I've never been a LeBron fan until he became a Laker. So I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible. And Tatum just simply is not as good of a player as LeBron. He's not. You can't really count on him the same way you could count on LeBron. But
exactly. Yeah,
I guess that is our list. Who do you have in your top 15 small forwards in the NBA list?
So, at number 15, I got Keldon Johnson. 14, Brandon Ingram. 13, OG Anunoby. 12, Jeremy Grant. 11, Mikal Bridges. 10, Franz Wagner. 9, Chris Middleton. 8, Scotty Barnes. 7, DeMar DeRozan. 6, Jimmy Butler. 5, Kawhi Leonard. 4, Paul George. 3, Jayson Tatum. 2, Kevin Durant. And at number 1, LeBron James.
For me, at number 15, I have Franz Wagner. 14, I have Chris Middleton. 13, Brandon Miller. 12, OG Anunoby. 11, DeMar DeRozan. 10, Mikal Bridges. 9, Brandon Ingram. 8, Scotty Barnes. 7, Jalen Williams. 6, Jimmy Butler. 5, Paul George. 4, Kawhi Leonard. 3, Kevin Durant. 2, Jayson Tatum. And number 1, LeBron James. So those are our lists. Let us know your thoughts on them. Did we get it right? Did we get it wrong? Let us know. If you like the content, make sure you like the video. Check out the other lists that we made. Again, they've been very fun, very unpredictable, as mentioned. The first point guards list, pretty similar, but not so similar for the shooting guards list, which was a pretty interesting conversation to have. So if you missed it, go catch up. But yeah, this is our top 15 small forwards list. We will have not small forwards. We'll have our power forwards list next week, next Monday. So look out for that. Make sure you're subscribed on the YouTube, following on podcast platforms. Follow us on the social medias as well. I've been saying I was going to make TikToks. I haven't been doing it, but eventually someday, maybe I will. We'll see. But yeah, anything you want to say before we head out?
Just want to kind of echo Memo's words real quick. Per usual, thank you guys for the continuous love and support to our channel. We definitely couldn't be where we are without you guys. It has been a fun journey. Almost about to enter season 2. This year definitely went by quick. And it's been fun, obviously, going through all the different creative concepts we could to entertain you guys. Aside from the regular in-season summaries, fun journey. And as mentioned earlier, we will be continuing this series for the top 15 power forwards and the top 15 centers. And then after that, we got a few other fire content for you guys shortly before the season will come around. But per usual, if you guys like our content, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Per usual, YouTube, Spotify, all our other platforms. TikTok will add some more content soon. And definitely make sure you guys stay tuned because we got way more good stuff to come.
That's for sure. But yeah, that's it for us. Thank you for watching. Take care, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.